Tower 6's radio only broadcasts screams from the future, and the shift binder says, never answer them. If I transmit back, the system flags it as a breach, and my contract dies at dawn, which would pull my health coverage right before my stepfather's refill window closes. The speaker grill smelled like hot plastic anyway, that faint heater and dust stink that always shows up when a circuit runs too warm. The radio doesn't predict accidents. It schedules them. That sounds like something a tired person would say to make a weird night feel less weird, but I'm not dressing this up. I was alone in a wooden tower on a ridge line, doing the same hourly check-in I'd done 100 times, and my own voice came out of the radio before I opened my mouth. A coffee mug sat by my log sheet, ring-staining the corner, because I keep forgetting coasters, no matter how many times I swear I'll stop. My hand went to the dial out of habit, thumb brushing the little piece of tape someone had stuck there years ago, the one marked R6 in black ink, like the radio needed reminding where it belonged. The check-in routine is muscle memory. Headset on, volume down, record button, say the call sign once, wait for the tone. Only the tone didn't come. A thin rasp filled the speaker instead, like someone dragging a breath through a foam cup, and then my voice. Not a recording of me talking on a past shift, not my usual steady Tower 6 hourly, but a version of me I didn't recognize. Get off the stairs, the voice screamed. Don't go down. The words hit my ears and my skin at the same time. My fingers turned cold on the knob because the radio's body was warm under my palm, warmer than it should have been, and the warmth felt like a warning. The binder lay open to the page the supervisor told me to keep clipped. A laminated corner tab was missing, torn off clean, and the paper had a staple shadow where something used to be. The rule line was short and underlined twice, like the person who wrote it didn't trust anyone's attention span. Do not answer future distress, it read. Log it. Wait for dispatch. My mouth went dry because logging means making the system real, and I'd already been written up once for overreacting. They called it a performance issue. They said the tower work needed calm people, not people who chased ghosts and static. The voice on the radio screamed again, closer, like it was right behind my headset. I'm serious, don't. I slapped the volume down so hard, the knob clicked. The silence that followed didn't feel like relief. It felt like the room had been emptied of air. Anyone who has worked a night shift alone knows the building sounds like a person when everything else goes quiet. Wood ticks, metal expands. A chair leg settles. Those are normal. Those are the tower reminding itself it exists. What happened next wasn't normal because the wind at the windows stopped too. No branch scrape, no pine hiss, no distant insect hum. Nothing. My stress reflex kicked in before my brain caught up. I double-tapped the latch on the trapdoor that leads to the stairs, the way I always do when I'm checking a seal. Tap, tap. It grounds me. It's stupid, but it works. The latch held. The radio sat there like a brick, dead silent, and the record light on the little attached printer blinked, as if it wanted to speak. A thin strip of paper curled out anyway, even though I hadn't transmitted. Words printed in faint gray, the thermal ink already fading at the edges. Tower 6. Stair. Not stay. Stair. I stared at it until my eyes started watering, because the printer had spelled my call sign right, and it had changed a single word in a way that made my stomach drop. That one letter difference turned a warning into a direction. A lie that looks like a typo is the easiest kind to obey. My radio crackled, softer now, and a different voice came through, distant and flat with fatigue. Tower 6, status, the dispatcher said. No issue, I said, which was my small lie. Routine check-in. The lie tasted like burnt coffee. Copy, the dispatcher replied. And that should have been the end of it, because the dispatcher has a dozen towers and a county's worth of roads to track. Storm line moving. Keep the log clean. Keep the log clean. That phrase sat behind my eyes, because the log is the tower's memory, and I'd watched the system punish people for dirty paperwork more than it punished them for real mistakes. The printer spit another inch of paper like it couldn't help itself. This time it didn't print words. It printed a block of static, a barcode-looking smear, and then a single line that made my throat tighten. Don't chase the signal. The line wasn't in the binder. It was in my own handwriting. My pen was on the desk, cap on, exactly where I always leave it. Always. The smell of the radio's warm plastic thickened, and I told myself there had to be a simple reason. A stuck key. A software hiccup at dispatch. A bad connector that turned a voice-to-text system into a bad joke. The human explanation felt safer, because human explanations come with someone to blame, and my probation clock didn't have room for supernatural. A hard thump sounded under the floor deep in the tower's bones. The trapdoor latch shifted under my double tap, a soft metallic click that sounded too much like a response. My chair scraped back before I decided to stand. The wood floor felt gritty under my boots. Pine dust ground into it by 100 shifts, and that grit made me think of the staircase below and how many times I'd walked it half asleep. My stepfather's Adab pill bottle flashed in my head, the one with the last refill date circled in red marker like a threat. I'd promised I'd be down by breakfast to drive it into town, because the pharmacy holds his meds for a narrow window, and missing that window turns inconvenient into emergency fast. Leaving early would break policy. Staying late would break my promise. The tower gave me another choice anyway. The radio snapped on by itself. No click from the switch, no rise in static, just the sudden presence of sound in a room that had been holding its breath. A scream ripped through the speaker, sharp enough to make my eyes squeeze shut. My own scream, again, except it ended in a wet cough and a word I couldn't place until my brain caught up. Trap, the voice choked. It's... The scream cut off, like someone yanked a cord. A second later, the dispatcher's voice returned, calmer, like the system had decided to behave. Tower 6, the dispatcher said, slower now. Run a reboot on the recorder, not the radio. The binder page fluttered, even though no wind moved. The line about reboots sat under the underlining, half covered by the coffee ring on the paper, and the stain made the last word hard to read. Reboot the recorder, the rule read. If the transcript changes, do not what? The coffee ring ate the end of the sentence. My jaw clenched, because someone had made a rule based on a thing they couldn't explain, and then they'd let a coffee stain erase the part that mattered. I pulled the recorder's plug and counted to 3 out of habit, like I was resetting a breaker. My fingers came away dusty from the cord. The dust felt warm, like the tower had been running hot all night. The recorder clicked back on, the printer whined, tiny and high, and another strip curled out. Tower 6. Stay. The word had fixed itself. Relief hit like a wave, stupid and immediate, and I hated myself for how badly I wanted the problem to be solvable. I wanted a trick. I wanted a glitch. I wanted to be able to tell the dispatcher this was nothing because nothing is safe. The radio remained quiet. Then the printer printed one more line, faint and clean, and my hands started shaking. Answer it. That wasn't in my handwriting. The letters were blocky, like the printer had switched fonts and the words were too neat to be an accident. I didn't touch the transmit button. I didn't even put my mouth near the mic. I kept my hands flat on the desk, palms down, like I could pin reality in place. A low hum rose from the radio's body, not from the speaker, from inside the casing, the vibration traveling through the desk into my wrists. It felt like a heartbeat, slow and patient. My stress reflex wanted the latch again, so I tapped it twice, harder this time. Tap, tap. Nothing moved. The latch held. The tower stayed silent, but the silence didn't feel empty anymore. It felt occupied. A rational thought tried to form. Dispatch runs, voice to text. The printer is tied into it. Someone could be messing with it. A training exercise. A punitive test for the guy on probation. The other thought came in right behind it, simpler and uglier. What if the test isn't from dispatch? The dispatcher's voice came back, and it sounded almost too normal, which made it worse. Reportable anomaly? The dispatcher asked. That was a loaded question. Saying yes would trigger a whole chain. Mandatory incident form, mandatory hold. Mandatory supervisor call at sunrise that would turn into a fitness for duty talk. The system loves paperwork, the way a fire loves dry needles. Saying no would keep my shift clean, which kept my job alive, which kept my stepfather's refill possible. A moral choice, dressed up as procedure. My tongue stuck to the roof of my mouth. The lie wanted to come out again. Negative, I said, and it came out anyway. No anomaly. The hum in the radio deepened like it approved. A new strip of paper fed out, and this time the printer didn't smear static. It printed a single word, the ink already fading as it appeared. Good, as it... My hands moved before I meant them to. I yanked the printer's paper strip and crumpled it, because I couldn't stand the idea of that word sitting on my desk, like a stamp. The crumple sounded too loud in the tower, and then the wind outside returned in a rush, like someone had opened a door. Pine branches scraped the window. The tower settled. The world came back. Only the radio stayed warm. A piece of tape on the binder's inside cover fluttered, and my eyes caught a corner of a handwritten note tucked under it. The note was old, creased like it had been folded and unfolded 100 times. The ink had bled from humidity, and one line was smeared like someone had wiped it with a thumb. One clean sentence survived. Don't chase the signal. My handwriting again. My stomach turned because I don't write notes to myself and forget them. I don't tuck notes into binders and then pretend surprise later. I'm not that careless, unless the system is. I unfolded the note carefully. Paper feels different when it's been handled by too many sweaty hands. It goes soft at the edges. It holds skin oil. It holds history. The top line had a date, and the ink there was smeared beyond reading. The second line was half gone too, but the shape of the missing words left enough space for something important. If the radio says stair, stay. The word stair was clear, underlined like the writer had been angry at it. That planted itself in my head like a nail. The printer had lied once. The note warned about that lie. The binder's coffee stain had eaten the end of a rule that might have told me what to do when the transcript changed. My heart kicked hard against my ribs, and the urge to call the dispatcher back surged up like nausea. Then the radio clicked, and my own voice whispered through the speaker, low and close, not screaming this time. "Don't," it said. "Please don't make the call." My hands hovered over the mic anyway, because panic looks a lot like competence when the only tool in the room is a radio. The transmit light blinked by itself, one slow pulse. A quote from the binder surfaced in my head, the underlined rule line that felt suddenly personal. If you hear your voice, you keep your mouth shut. That was the first rule on the page, and I'd skipped over it because it sounded like superstition until the tower made it real. I sat back, breath shallow. The mic stayed untouched. The tower answered my restraint with another strip of paper. This one printed a sentence so clean it could have been typed by a person, and the neatness made my skin crawl. You can stop it by leaving. Trap rule, my brain whispered like a label I didn't want to use. The binder page flapped again, and the coffee ring dragged across the line I couldn't read earlier, revealing a new edge of ink. Do not leave. The stain hadn't erased the end of the sentence. The page had shifted under it, like the words were moving around in response to my attention. My breath came out in a short, ugly laugh. A panic laugh. I hated that laugh, because it felt like giving the tower a reaction. The dispatcher cut in again. "Tower 6, the dispatcher said, more urgent now. "My transcript shows an extra voice. Confirm." Extra voice. That meant the system at dispatch was hearing what I was hearing, which meant this wasn't just my tower's hardware getting weird. The evidence had crossed the ridge. My throat tightened so hard it hurt. Saying yes would start the incident chain. Saying no would keep my shift clean, but it would also keep the dispatcher blind. And if the system was using my tower as a mouthpiece, keeping the dispatcher blind felt like helping the wrong side. Duty fought duty. "I'm running checks," I said, which wasn't an answer. "Stand by." The dispatcher paused, and in that pause a faint sound crept up through the floor. Not wind, not the tower settling, a soft, rhythmic tap like a fingernail on wood coming from the stairwell below. Tap, tap, tap. My skin prickled. The sound climbed in my imagination step by step, and the note's warning flared again. If the radio says stair, stay. The printer spat out another strip, and this time the letters weren't crisp. The line looked like it had been dragged sideways mid-print, smearing the message into a gray streak. Stay, why? Half stare, half stay, half command. My mouth filled with spit, then dried out again. My palms were damp on the desk, and I wiped them on my pants without thinking, another habit I hate. The hypothesis in my head split cleanly into two tracks. 1. Dispatch is running a compliance test. Someone is injecting audio. The printer is being fed altered transcripts. The tapping is an animal in the stairs, and my brain is matching patterns because I'm stressed and alone. 2. The tower is using the system to steer me. It isn't predicting the future. It's manufacturing it by making me obey the wrong thing. I picked the human explanation because people can be outsmarted, and I needed something I could fight without turning this into a campfire story. A test would leave fingerprints. The recorder was the easiest place to look. I pulled its last file and played it back through the tiny, tinny monitor speaker. The sound that came out wasn't static. It wasn't wind. It was the scream again. My scream. And under it, barely audible, a dry voice speaking in the same cadence the dispatcher uses when she reads boilerplate. "Stand by," it said. "Stand by." The voice didn't belong to her. It belonged to the system pretending to be her. My stomach flipped. The dispatcher came through on the radio again, and the words landed wrong in my ears now, too smooth, too timed. "Tower 6, the dispatcher said. "Open the hatch. Visual check. Confirm no intrusion." Visual check. The binder had a line about visual checks, and the underlining on that line was lighter, like whoever wrote it hadn't been sure. If the stairs knock, you do not open the hatch. The rule was clear. The dispatch instruction contradicted it. A choice formed in my chest, like a knot. Either the dispatcher had become part of the test, or the system was wearing her voice like a mask. My stress reflex went to the latch again. Tap, tap. The latch clicked once, soft, like it had answered back. My fingers froze on the metal. Tap, 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 came the sound from below, perfectly matching my taps now, perfectly timed. A laugh bubbled up again, smaller, strangled. "No," I whispered, and the word felt useless. The printer fed out a strip with a single line, letters faint at the edges. "Open it." My hands shook hard enough to make the paper flutter. The tower had turned my grounding habit into a communication channel, and the realization made my skin crawl. I didn't open the hatch. Instead, I broke the rule that felt safest. I keyed the mic once, quick, and forced my voice into a steady register the way I do when I'm trying to sound competent for someone on the other end. "Dispatch," I said, "transmit a callback code." A callback code exists for storms and interference. A simple phrase that proves the dispatcher is real and not a relay artifact. We don't use it often, people forget it. Management hates anything that slows a shift down. Breaking policy to demand it felt like accusing the dispatcher of being fake. The radio stayed silent. Then my own voice screamed through the speaker. Not a recording this time, live and ragged. "Don't chase the signal." The phrase landed like a slap, because it wasn't the tower's trick line. It was mine, the same wording from the note, the same shape in my mouth. Tap, 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 came from the stairs. The dispatcher's voice returned, and it sounded tired in a way that felt human. "No callback tonight," the dispatcher said. "System won't allow it." System won't allow it. That line didn't belong in her mouth. The dispatcher doesn't talk like that. The dispatcher blames people, not systems. A physical chill crawled over my forearms, starting where they touched the desk, like the wood itself had gone cold. The tower had been running warm all night, and now the temperature shifted in a single breath, flipping the room from stale heat to freezer air. A resource loss, my brain supplied, because it wanted structure. Comm is failing, evidence is shifting, safe space is turning hostile. "Repeat," I said, and the word came out sharp. The dispatcher didn't answer. Instead, the printer whined, and the paper strip that emerged carried a line that looked older than the ink could explain, like it had been printed and reprinted until the letters wore thin. "If you leave, you become proof." The sentence hit like a punch, because it didn't threaten me with death or blood. It threatened me with becoming an entry in a binder, a file in a system, a scream in a loop. My stepfather's refill window flashed again, stubborn and human. He needed the meds. He needed me to leave this tower by morning. He needed me to keep my job so I could keep paying for the visits that keep him out of an ambulance. The tower didn't care about any of that. The tower cared about compliance. The tapping from the stairs stopped. Not faded. Stopped like a switch flipped. Silence flooded the stairwell, and that silence felt worse than the tapping, because it removed the one obvious threat and left the room waiting for the next decision. A fresh strip printed, the letters crisp again, like the system was trying to look trustworthy. "Evacuation prevents escalation," it read. That sounded like policy language. That sounded like safety training. That sounded like a reasonable instruction from a reasonable agency. Trap rule. The note in my handwriting warned without saying it. My eyes went to the binder again. The coffee-stained line about leaving had changed shape. Where it had read, "Do not leave," the ink now looked smudged, the knot half swallowed by stain, leaving only a command that made my stomach drop. "Do leave." One missing word can kill a person. I held the binder closer to the desk lamp and squinted until my eyes ached. Under the stain, a faint ghost of ink still formed the missing letters. Not. The tower had been editing my options in real time. My throat tightened until swallowing hurt. A new kind of fear took over. The fear of being blamed for doing the wrong thing when the rules themselves won't hold still. That fear pushed me into motion. The backup handset sat in a metal cradle by the window, old and ugly, used for storms. When the main radio runs hot, I'd never needed it. Management hates it because it's analog, and analog means there's no transcript, no searchable log, no tidy evidence chain. A stubborn part of me loved it for that reason. My fingers wrapped around the handset and the cold plastic bit into my palm. I felt the texture of scuffed grip ridges, years of other hands, and that texture grounded me in something real. I pulled the cord free from the cradle. The main radio's hum dropped instantly. The tower exhaled. Wind returned at the windows. The desk stopped vibrating. Even my heartbeat slowed, like my body had been holding itself ready to run. 2 or 3 seconds of relief slipped into me before my brain slapped it down. Relief is how traps close. The handset crackled with empty static. Honest static. No screams. No words. Just the sound of distance. A laugh tried to rise again, and I bit it off by pressing my teeth together. "Dispatch," I said into the handset, careful. "Tower 6. Confirm receipt." The handset stayed quiet. Then the dispatcher's voice came back, clearer than before and so normal it made my eyes sting. "Copy," the dispatcher said. "Stay put. Day crew delayed." Stay put. Those were the words the printer had fixed earlier. The word the note underlined, and hearing it from her mouth felt like someone had tightened a knot around my ribs. Day crew delayed meant my stepfather's refill wouldn't happen unless I left the tower unattended. Leaving the tower unattended is a firing offense. The policy is clear about that, and my probation paperwork makes it sharper. The tower had set my obligations against each other and waited. A soft scrape sounded at the window, high and close, like a fingernail on glass. My head snapped up, and the desk lamp threw my reflection back at me, pale and strained. Something else moved behind that reflection. Not a person, not an animal. A shape got too close to the glass for there to be room. A distortion that pushed the reflected forest aside like a thumb on a screen. My lungs locked. The scrape came again, slower, and the glass vibrated under it. A tremor I felt more than heard. The handset in my grip warmed fast, warming like the main radio had, and the warmth made my skin crawl. A strip printed from the thermal unit anyway, even though I'd pulled the main radio. The printer shouldn't have been able to do that. The line it produced was so faint I had to tilt it under the lamp. All outputs route through R6. The code sat there like a brand. My hands trembled and a harsh thought cut through the noise in my head. Stupid. So stupid. I'd believed the handset was outside the system. I'd believed analog meant safe. The tower had let me believe it because belief is another kind of compliance. "I'm stepping outside for a visual," I said into the handset, and the words came out before I decided them. Pro-social motive wrapped around the choice like a justification. If something is at the window, it could be an animal tangled in the railing. It could be a person, a lost hiker, a crew member, someone who needs help. The rule about not opening the hatch when the stairs knock flashed again, but the stairs weren't knocking now. The window was. A loophole law my brain supplied because it wanted a way out. Help costs something. Do the right thing and pay. My hand went to the hatch latch. Tap, tap. The latch stayed still. The scrape at the window stopped, sudden and complete, and the silence that followed felt like it had weight. No wind, no branch, no insect. The world outside the glass froze. My stomach twisted. The tower didn't want me to check the window. It wanted me to go down. Stair. The printed typo from earlier slammed back into my mind, and the note's warning rose with it. If the radio says stair, stay. The printer coughed out another strip, the line crisp, confident, wrong. Go to the stairs. My throat tightened until my voice wouldn't work. I wanted to call the dispatcher. I wanted to confess the lie. I wanted to dump every strip of paper onto her desk, like evidence in a courtroom. The handset crackled, and my own voice whispered again, almost gentle now. Just go, it said. You can still fix it. Fix it. That was my weakness. That was the human flaw that keeps me working when I should walk away. I always think one more correct action will undo a chain of wrong ones. My stress reflex turned into a decision. I double-tapped the latch again, harder, and the second tap landed on metal that moved. The hatch clicked open. Cold air surged up from the stairwell, carrying a smell of damp wood and old pennies, metallic and sour, like the inside of a closed toolbox. The odor didn't belong in the tower. The stairs are dry. The tower is dry. That smell belonged underground. A low sound rose with it, not tapping now. A slow, mechanical rhythm like a printer, feeding paper somewhere below. The tower doesn't have a printer below. My hand hovered over the hatch, and guilt hit like a bruise. If I went down, I'd be obeying the system. If I stayed up, I'd be disobeying the thing that could be wearing the dispatcher's voice. Either way, someone else paid. My stepfather's face flashed again, tired and gray, trusting me to show up in the morning with a bottle and an apology for being late. I closed my eyes, forced a breath in, and made the responsible choice that still felt like betrayal. I keyed the handset and spoke fast, words tumbling into each other. Dispatch, anomaly confirmed, I said. Transcript altered, possible spoof. Lockout Tower 6. A forced action, a confession, a stake. The handset stayed quiet long enough for the word lockout to sink into my bones. Lockout means doors don't open. It means keys don't work. It means the tower becomes a sealed container. A containment attempt. Relief should have followed because I'd done the correct thing. I'd escalated to authority. I'd chosen duty over fear. Instead, the handset returned my own voice, calm and close, like it had been waiting. Good, it said. Now go down. The printer fed out a final strip, and the letters on it weren't gray. They were black, impossible on fading thermal paper, dark like fresh ink. Containment requires proof. My stomach dropped. The tower wanted me to become evidence. The tower wanted me to leave a scream in the system strong enough to justify the lockout, strong enough to live in a binder for the next person to obey. A click sounded at the desk, small and final. The handset went dead. Not static, dead like a battery pulled. The wind outside stayed frozen. The world stayed silent. The hatch stayed open, breathing that damp metallic air into my tower like an invitation. Then from below a voice rose. Not a scream, not a tap. A steady, measured repetition like someone reading a line into a recorder over and over until it sticks. Tower 6, Stair, it said. Tower 6, Stair. My own voice again, but flatter. Like the system had drained the emotion out and left only the instruction. My hands shook so hard I had to grip the desk edge. The wood bit into my fingertips, splinters catching under the nail, and that pain helped more than it should have. A harsh hinge line surfaced in my head, and it made me feel sick. It didn't register until later. The printer had never misheard. It had been teaching. The first time it printed Stair, I treated it like a glitch, a typo, something small. The tower treated it like a lever. My eyes darted to the handwritten note again. The smeared line above the warning had started to clear at the edges like humidity was pulling ink back into shape. If it says Stair, stay. One more line beneath it was still mostly smeared, but a few letters showed through now, enough to form a threat. If you go, you scream. My mouth opened and no sound came out. My throat felt tight, not from emotion, but from the cold air pouring up from the hatch, like it was drying me from the inside. I backed away from the hatch in 2 short steps, a chair bumping my knee, and the floor under my boots vibrated once, a gentle tremor like a distant truck passing. The tremor repeated, closer now, and the tower's support beams answered with a soft groan. Something was moving in the stairs. A decision slammed into me, sharp and immediate. Close the hatch. Seal it. Cut the path. Don't chase the signal. My stress reflex lined up with it. Tap, tap. And then my hands grabbed the hatch lid. The lid felt heavier than it should. The wood was damp. The dampness left a slick film on my palms like condensation on a cold bottle, and that dampness didn't belong. I shoved the hatch down. The lid resisted, like something beneath it pushed back. Not hard, patient, testing. My muscles locked. I shoved again, jaw clenched, and the hatch dropped another inch. A whisper rose through the gap. "You can still fix it," my voice said. The phrase hit my weakness again, and I hated how effective it was. A strip printed behind me, the printer whining like a tiny animal. The sound broke the focus I'd built, and that break cost me. The hatch lid jerked upward, not flung, lifted slowly as if a hand beneath it had found leverage. Cold air surged up harder, and the scent of damp pennies thickened until my eyes watered. I let go. The hatch swung open the rest of the way with a gentle finality that made my blood run cold. A shape rose into view in the stairwell's darkness, framed by the hatch like a picture. The tower gave me a still moment, a single frozen frame of evidence. Long arms, too long, elbows bending wrong, a head that didn't tilt like a human head when it looks up. No face, just a smooth, pale plane, where a face should be, reflecting the desk lamp's light back at me like dull wax. It didn't rush, it didn't lunge. It waited, as if patience was part of the procedure. My lungs finally unlocked, and I stumbled back, bumping the desk, knocking the coffee mug over. Coffee spilled, dark and warm, spreading across the binder page in a new stain, drowning the rules in liquid. A resource loss, my brain screamed. Evidence, the binder. The figure in the hatch lifted one long hand and placed it on the ladder rung. The sound of that touch was wrong. Not wood on skin, not wood on glove. A soft paper drag sound like a sheet sliding across another sheet, and it made my stomach twist. I backed toward the door that leads to the small platform outside the tower, because flight is a simple impulse when every other choice feels like compliance. The door handle felt slick under my palm, metal colder than it should be, and my stress reflex wanted to tap the latch there too. Tap, tap, anything to make a lock real. The handle didn't turn, no resistance, no stuck latch. Just dead, like the door had been replaced with a prop. The tower had removed the option to leave the top. Only the stairs remained. My own scream blasted from the radio speaker again, even though the radio was supposedly off. And the scream carried words this time, clear and final. "That's the one," the voice screamed. "That's the door." The scream cut into a wet cough, and then the same voice whispered, softer, almost tender, "Go down." The false resolution I'd been clinging to, the idea that calling dispatch would seal this, collapsed in my chest. Authority hadn't helped. Procedure hadn't helped. Containment hadn't sealed anything. It had escalated. A strip of paper fed out one more time, the letters crisp, cold, official. Evacuation required. Use stairs. Trap rule. Dressed as safety again. And my brain buckled under the pressure, and a shame spike hit hard enough to make my eyes burn. I'd lied to keep my shift clean. I'd delayed reporting to keep my job. Now the tower had my voice, and my rules, and my handwriting, and it was using all of it like leverage. The only thing I still owned was my body, and even that felt negotiable. A thought came in, low and stubborn. The kind of thought that's more habit than bravery. My stepfather's refill. If I stayed here and became a scream, nobody was driving that bottle into town. Nobody was bringing the meds. Nobody was taking the morning call. The system would bury me as an incident and move on. Leaving might be a trap, but staying was its own kind of harm. I chose the lesser harm the way people do when both doors burn. I moved to the hatch. The wax-faced shape had climbed one rung, then stopped, like it had done what it needed to do. It didn't block the ladder, it didn't chase, it offered a measured descent, a controlled fall. My boots found the ladder rung, and the wood was slick with dampness that didn't belong. My fingers wrapped the side rails, and the rails vibrated under my grip with that slow internal hum, like the tower itself had a pulse. Halfway down, the silence weaponized itself again. Wind vanished. The radio static vanished. Even the distant forest felt muted, like the world outside the tower had been wrapped in foam. Only one sound remained. A dry page-turning noise, slow and steady, coming from somewhere below, like someone reading a binder in the dark. That sound didn't belong in the stairs. My lungs tightened. My hands slipped on the damp rails, and panic looped once in my head, sharp and ugly. Hold the rail! Hold it! Hold it now! I forced my grip tighter, and the rail bit into my palm hard enough to sting. The sting grounded me, but it didn't fix the problem, because the next rung down wasn't where it should have been. The ladder felt longer. Stair. The printed lie. My foot searched for the next step, found empty air, and the moment stretched. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just an ugly, sudden miscalculation. My weight shifted wrong. The stairwell swallowed me. A harsh impact slammed into my shoulder, wood cracking under it, and pain flared hot enough to steal my breath. My head whipped, and the world spun, lamplight and dark swapping places too fast. My mouth opened and a sound tore out of me, raw and involuntary. A scream. My scream. The scream echoed in the stairwell and up into the tower above, and in that echo I heard something else layered under it, a faint hiss of static, like the tower had been recording even before I knew I was performing. My hand scrabbled for purchase and found the stair rail, fingers closing on splintered wood. The wood was wet. Not with rain. With condensation thick like the air in the stairs had been breathing. I gagged once, tried to inhale, and my lungs filled with that damp metallic smell, pennies and rot, and the smell dragged a memory into place like a hook. The printer's line, "If you go, you scream." The tower hadn't predicted my fall. It had arranged my misstep by teaching me to trust a printed typo. Pain pulsed through my shoulder in a hot rhythm that matched the tower's hum. My mind tried to go blank, tried to go into shock, but fear kept it sharp. A faint glow showed above the hatch outline, and I could hear the radio now, muffled through floors and distance, relaying my scream back in a tinny loop. My voice climbed out of the tower while my body lay halfway down its spine. A new voice joined the loop, calm and procedural, speaking over my scream in the dispatcher's cadence. "Confirmed," it said. "Anomaly recorded." The system was filing me. My hands shook as I reached into my pocket for the little backup recorder I carry for weather notes. The plastic case felt slick with sweat. My thumb fumbled the button twice before it clicked on. A competence move, a desperate one. I held it up toward the hatch and forced air into my throat until words formed. "Do not use the stairs," I rasped. "Do not trust the transcript." My own voice screamed over me from the radio above, drowning my warning out. and I realized the tower wasn't just broadcasting the future, it was drowning the present. The only way to get a message out was through the system that wanted me as proof. A choice snapped into place, cold and clear. Use the tower's hunger against it. I lifted the recorder and pressed it to the stair rail, because the rail vibrated with that internal hum, and anything vibrating carries sound. My hands shook, but the decision held. I whispered into the recorder, slow, deliberate, words built like a rule line. Lock out Tower 6, leave the hatch sealed, burn the binder. The phrase burn the binder scared me, because it felt like destroying evidence, and destroying evidence feels like wrongdoing, but the binder was the trap delivery system now. Keeping it intact would feed the tower another mouth. My stepfather's face flashed again, and guilt punched me for dragging his need into this, for letting his refill become a lever the tower could pull. Pain flared as I shifted, and a wet cough tore out of me, and the cough came back up the stairs through the radio a half-second later, cleaner, louder, as if the tower had been waiting for it. Future scream, future cough, future proof. I turned my mouth close to the stair rail and forced one more line out, because a warning that can't be repeated dies. Don't chase the signal, I whispered, and the phrase felt like a nail driven into wood. The radio above went quiet for a heartbeat. Then my own voice screamed again, higher now, and the scream carried a new word that I hadn't said. Good, it screamed. The tower approved, the tower learned. Somewhere above, something clicked. Not a latch, a switch. The radio's hum shifted pitch. The printer's whine rose, faint but audible even down here, and paper fed like it was printing an entire new page of rules. A cold, institutional voice, not the dispatcher, not me, spoke once into the static. All outputs route through R6, it said. Then the world snapped back, wind roaring around the tower again, branches scraping glass, sound layers returning at once like a flood. My recorder's tiny light blinked on my palm, still running. A crackle cut through the stairwell, and the dispatcher's real voice finally broke through, ragged with panic. Tower 6, the dispatcher said. Talk. I swallowed, pain spiking, and forced words out that wouldn't get filtered into a neat narrative. Seal it, I said. Don't send relief. Don't use the stairs. A pause, a breath, a human sound. Copy, the dispatcher said, and the word came out broken. Hold. I couldn't hold. My shoulder burned, my fingers slipped, my vision tunneled. The stairwell's damp, metallic smell thickened again, and the hum in the rail deepened like the tower was bracing for another file. I pressed the recorder's stop button with my thumb, and then pressed it again. A micro-correction made out of panic, because I wanted that message saved in more than one place. I wanted redundancy the way people want prayer. The light blinked twice. Above me, the radio screamed. My scream delayed, shaped, repurposed, broadcast into the future for the next tired person with a binder and a coffee ring stain to hear. That's the part I can't shake. I wasn't attacked. I wasn't hunted. I was processed. Later, after they hauled me out and handed me paperwork with sympathetic faces, the dispatcher sent a photo from the incident folder they'd opened. The shift binder from Tower 6 sat on a metal table, dried coffee staining the page, and someone had written a new line at the bottom in black marker. If you've seen that mark before, don't ignore it. The mark in the photo wasn't a signature. It was a small printed R6, tucked into the corner like a routing stamp. One more detail kept me awake long after my shoulder stopped screaming. The antenna cable in the photo lay coiled neatly behind the radio, still zip-tied, never connected to anything, which means the only thing Tower 6 ever broadcast was whatever had already been inside it.